Okay, well, welcome everyone, and I'm really pleased to have Karolina Noree with me, who is an amazing photographer based in South Africa. And but I'm not going to talk much because Carolina has some amazing stories to share anyway. I'm pretty sure. And the first one is that you grew up in Sweden, and now you're in South Africa near Kruger. So perhaps you'd like to start by talking about that.
Yes, sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Happy to be here, and hi to all the listeners. I hope you guys will enjoy these stories that I've got to share. Yeah. So let's as you say, take it from the start, I guess. Yeah. This is probably like the number one story I get from guests and people that I meet, and they're like, "What? How did a Swedish girl end up in South Africa? Like, what happened?" And it's a long story, but I'm gonna try to keep it short. I basically came to South Africa for a holiday after I finished like our equivalent to high school. And I was like, wanted to travel. I wanted to take like a gap year and see something different. And because of very random circumstances, I ended up in South Africa at a horse safari and volunteering there because I was a horse girl. Still am, even though I don't have much time to ride horses anymore, unfortunately. And then I just absolutely loved it. It was the best 2 months of my life, and I completely fell in love with South Africa and like the wildlife because we were at the horse safari that was outside of Kruger, and then we would stay like just like across the fence, I guess, in Kruger, and that's where we would go on game drives almost every day and like see wildlife and all those kind of things. So that was absolutely incredible, and I just also loved like the lifestyle and the people that I met. It was very, very different from how it is in Sweden, obviously,
Yeah.
and absolutely loved it. And then when I came back to Sweden, I was like, no, I have to go back to South Africa. Like this that was the only thing I could think about. So I did everything I could to be able to go back as often as possible. And then I was eventually able to do my safari guide training. And while I was doing that, I was also traveling more of the country and seeing more, which was also amazing. And again, just kept on falling in love with South Africa. And during this time, I also fell in love with like wildlife photography because I had a camera. And you go to Africa, you go to on safari, you like kind of have to bring a camera. And I've always enjoyed taking photos. And that's when I started taking photos of wildlife and really like fell in love with that. So that started growing more and more. And as I finished my guiding training, I also met my now fiance, and we started living together and working together. So through him, I was able to start working in South Africa, and then able to like officially move there eventually. And that was also around the same time that I started my Instagram because my friend was like, you need to put your photos out somewhere, like your photos are great, and just put them out somewhere. And I was like, oh, isn't that just so cringe to to start on Instagram? Yeah, and I thought it was super embarrassing, but I was like, oh, let me do it. And I think it's also like one of the best things I've ever done because having a specific Instagram for my photos, one gave me like the motivation to keep going and to keep putting my photos out somewhere to like the world. And
Yeah.
also I started following a lot of other photographers through that Instagram. So like still to this day, I only pretty much follow photographers on my like photography Instagram because I want that to be a space where I get inspired by others. And I don't want to see like someone like having a lunch or whatever with their friend. I'm like, that's not what I care about on this specific Instagram. If I need to see what my friends are up to, I go to my other private Instagram. But on my photography, I only follow photographers because that's my space to be inspired by other people. And then I was yeah basically able to eventually move to South Africa through my fiance, and yeah, we started working together in the bush, and then it just kind of grew from there, and then here we are. Now I work full time with my photography, which is crazy.
That's fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
questions that I have. I mean, you've answered some of them. So I was going to ask what came first, the photography or the wildlife. But I guess to an extent, it was the photography if you were interested in horses initially, but then the
Mm.
wildlife kind of happened from what you've said through being in the bush and just exposure to these amazing animals that are just, yeah.
No, exactly. I think it started with like if you wonder, because I guess this is the question for most like wildlife photographers, did it start with the passion for wildlife or did it start with the passion for photography? And for me, it started with the passion for photography. I've always enjoyed taking photos, and I used to have like photo shoot with my friends, like borrowing my dad's camera, and so I've always enjoyed photography and enjoyed that part of it. And then the wildlife came into it, and like now that I'm back in Sweden, I look at wildlife here in such a different way that I'd never noticed before when I was actually living here.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, wait, there's a deer, and oh, look at the squirrel. Oh, it's doing this and this. And I kind of realized these things because I've learned about the wildlife in South Africa. I'm now learning about the wildlife in Sweden. And I was like, when I lived here, did I see this many animals? Like, I can't remember seeing deer that often. And maybe the population has grown, I don't know. But also, I think now I'm more tuned into seeing the wildlife and being interested in it. So I see more of it when I'm back home than I probably did before.
I can totally relate to that because I've got this little place in France now near Bordeaux, and this year I let the grass, because it's a reasonable large garden, and I just let some of it grow wild just to see what happened. And I've had hares coming into the garden, which I haven't seen before.
Fantastic.
And I've had deer come in before anyway at the top of the garden. But it's so cool because you're absolutely right. Once you've got an appreciation for I'm not going to say, well, I want to say the exotic animals, but because to a lot of people they are. But if you really get into that, then you begin to take that back to where you live, and you begin to see there's so much more around you than you were previously aware of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I had another question. It just popped out of my head.
Sure.
That happens to me quite a lot. So with I know what I was going to say. It was with you're talking about taking photographs of your friends. Do you find that you have a crossover of disciplines? So, and what I mean by that, I did a bit of professional portrait photography work, and now when I photograph animals, that's one of the things I kind of have in the back of my mind. So those two things have cross-fertilized, as it were, and I love taking portrait-y sort of shots of animals. Do you find you've had that kind of experience as well?
Yes and no. I think when I was taking photos of my friends, it was never professionally or anything. So
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing. It was just like the passion of like capturing things, and I would go out. I remember I would go out like and just photograph like random things in nature that I thought was pretty, and like and I think that's actually great that I did, just because
Yeah.
I enjoyed like just using the camera and just
Yeah.
capturing. And I was like, this looks so much better, sometimes better on camera than it did in real life, kind of thing. But I think I also like now I definitely do other types of photography than just wildlife, and I definitely find that like as you say, cross-pollinating and kind of like things that I've learned with the wildlife discipline, so to say, works with now that I do a little bit more work like for companies, and I do other like not really much portraits anymore, but a little bit like product photography and like those kind of things. Every now and then, not that much, but still, you use that kind of. You obviously use the knowledge that you have from wildlife to for those kind of things as well, and just general nature and landscape photography, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's interesting though. What I want to mention is because something that I do feel really has helped me is like in school learning about like painting and like art and stuff, that has helped me a lot
Yeah.
with not that I was ever professional or ever really good at painting at all, but you learn techniques of like shading and color theory and those kind of things, and that has really helped me with editing with wildlife,
Yeah.
and using like the brush tool in Lightroom, painting in like, okay, let me paint a little bit darker here and a little bit lighter here to get that kind of 3D effect. And that's something that I find quite interesting, that really has helped with my photography today.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I love that. And I think when you're in those other disciplines, you start looking at things in a different way. You see different things there, and then you can bring them back to the photography. I'm going to ask the one I spoke about before we started recording about the camera gear, because I often get asked, and so I'll ask you, and also about what lenses you use and that kind of thing, because I think people like to know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the question I get all the time as well. And actually, I have a reel on my Instagram. So if anyone wants to see like the specific photos I've taken with the specific gear, you can go and check that reel. I've pinned it on my Instagram because I get this question all the time. But I currently have a Nikon D800, so it's a DSLR, and that's what I use for everything at the moment. It's my only camera. I am looking at upgrading, and I am in the process of doing that, but that will have to be a cliffhanger for a later stage. But so far, like it's an old DSLR model, so it obviously is a little bit slower, and it doesn't have all the new fancy functions of Wi-Fi connection and this and that. But honestly, it's really still keeping up in the game, which is really cool to see because it is such a high quality camera. So I've been loving it, and yeah, really been awesome. So that's the camera I use, and then for lenses, I've got one lens that is a 80-400 f 4.5 to 5.6, and that's pretty much my like travel lens, because it's much smaller than the next one that I'll talk about now. And it's an awesome lens that, it's great to have the zoom. Being able to zoom in and out is just easy and convenient. And then it's a little bit smaller to travel with. So I really enjoy that lens as well. But my absolute favorite lens that I use as much as I can when it's not too heavy to travel with is my 300 2.8. And that's just an absolutely magical lens. That obviously, like the 2.8 just is an incredible f-stop and aperture, and it just lets in so much light, which makes a big difference with wildlife photography, and you get those like nice blurry backgrounds, and yeah, so it's stunning. And the quality is just next level. So that's my absolute favorite lens. And then with that lens, I also have a teleconverter. So it 2x teleconverter, which makes it a 600 5.6, which also still is really, really nice. People often ask me about the thoughts on teleconverters, because there's a lot of talks out on the internet of like, oh no, you should never get a teleconverter, the quality is just so much worse. And I think it depends on your lens. Obviously the 300, like the quality is absolutely insane from the start. So yes, it gets knocked down a notch when I put the teleconverter on, but it's still so good that it's better, like the quality is better than my 80-400. So to put that in perspective, it's just slightly better, but then the 300 is just amazing.
You're starting from a very high level and just dropping down a little bit, but it's still
exactly
in a good place.
Exactly, but I think especially if you have some, and that's the thing, it's a prime lens, so the quality is gonna be nice, and then obviously you go from a f2.8 to a f5.6 instead, which also is still really, really good on 600. So I think what people can keep in mind there, just to give some advice, like if you use a teleconverter with something that is maybe like a zoom lens, or if it's a third-party lens, then you need to keep in mind that you might lose quite a lot of quality. So that's just my advice to people, is like, if you have a really high quality lens from the start, then yes, you could probably use a teleconverter. But if you have something that's like, mid-range like quality, then you're probably going to get quite bad quality with a teleconverter. But then so that's my like wildlife stuff, and then I also have a 28mm for like some star photography every now and then, some landscapes, some other stuff, and then I also have a 85 f 1.4, and that's also a absolutely stunning lens, especially for portraits and stuff. I'm sure you know. 85 is a beautiful focal length, and the 1.4 is just also magical. So that's my camera gear.
That's great. So that's helpful, because that, as I say, that's one that I get asked a lot as well. So it's always nice for anybody thinking about getting into wildlife photography, where they've got that big trip coming up, and want to make sure they've got good gear so they can get the most from it. It's always good to get some tips there. While we're on the gear side of it, I'll ask you about drone photography. So we had a brief chat about that before, and just what your thoughts are on that. And then I'll move on to some stories.
Yeah, sure. Drones, it's a tricky tricky subject, and it's funny that you mentioned, because I said to you as well, like we actually just had a whole episode on our podcast. Me and my fiance also have a podcast, and where we talk about like our thoughts, and we can like go on for like a whole hour talking about it, because it is a complicated thing. And I think it can, just to summarize what we spoke about there, I think it can be done in an ethical way, and it can be done in a good way when it's like done very far away, like you have big distances to the animals, basically like you are filming the landscape and then it happens to be an animal there, like, you know, that kind of vibe. Then I feel like, okay, you know, the animal is obviously not bothered by it. And that's the thing as well. You can obviously also, some animals might be more relaxed with it, and you can see in the video, if you have any type of animal, you know, knowledge and behavior knowledge, you will see in the video if they are comfortable or not. And you can see if they are running away constantly from the drone, or if they are just sitting there and they like not bothered. Then obviously, like if they're just sitting there and they're not bothered, then I think that's fine. I think in many drone shots of animals, you will directly see if they are uncomfortable, and it's maybe not done ethically because they are running from the drone. And that is, you know, directly a sign of these animals are not comfortable with you here. And it's almost a little bit it's almost a little bit funny, like in a, you know, in a horrible way, because you see these like drone videos and footage of animals like running constantly, in every single shot they're like running, they're on their way somewhere. And I'm like, anyone who has been on safari, for example, or out in nature, you know, even in Europe, they will know that animals don't run very often unless they are scared of something, or they're being chased, or like it's not like, you know, you have an antelope that is eating some grass on this side of like a field, and they're like, oh, on the other side of the field, that looks like a great piece of grass, let me run there. Exactly. Like that doesn't happen. So that for me is a big, you know, telltale sign that like this is not done. And same thing with like birds, they will fly away from the drone, and that's a big thing. But I think also worth mentioning, for me personally, I think when it comes to flying a drone, even though an animal might be comfortable, like an animal is lying there and they are chilled, they don't care about the drone, I think with anything, when it comes to the internet and when it comes to pushing, you know, new boundaries and testing limits and stuff, it is, even though you might be doing it right, like you as whoever drone photographer we're talking about, might be doing it right, this specific animal isn't uncomfortable, like that's fine. But you putting it out on the internet is inspiring other people to do the same, and they might not be doing it as ethically as you. And that's the danger with it. And I think that's the danger with anything that promotes, like, you know, getting closer to animals with drones, with vehicles, with as a person, whatever it might be. Even though you might be doing everything right, it is so important to just keep in mind that putting it out on the internet, other people might, you know, try to do the same.
Yeah, and you don't want to be stressing the animal in any way with what you're doing. And I agree with you. I mean, I've seen some absolutely stunning drone photographs. There's one I was looking at yesterday. It was some zebra on I don't know where it would have been actually. They were on a sand dune, but very low. The sun was very low, so it had very long shadows. And it was one of those pictures where you got the clear outline of the animal in shadow, and then you can see the animal standing. Amazing. And it's absolutely stunning. But excuse me, as you say, you're very high up, so you're not going to stress the animal. And the other one for me is humpback whales, when you can get these eye shots of them just coming up to the surface, because I've photographed them from a boat, but it's really cool to get that different angle. But again, you do it in a way that doesn't stress the animal out. So I think you're absolutely right. That's so important.
Exactly, because those, I know exactly what, like, photos of like the zebra you're talking about, and that's absolutely insane. And like, but you can see the zebra are walking, and they're not running. Like, they are on their way somewhere, they're walking in a line, like, and they're not running away from the drone. and you get those long shadows, and that's amazing. And I think sometimes even those photos, I don't know like the specific photos, but I know in like Namibia, this, because I'm guessing this might be like Namibia if it's like
Well, that was
desert.
my guess with the sand dunes like that. Yeah.
That's usually where those photos are taken. There's obviously other places as well, but just guessing. But I also know that sometimes people go on, helicopter flips and helicopter rides, and they actually taken from a helicopter, and which is an even bigger drone, I guess. And and then they maybe even using like a telephoto lens, so they're so high up that they're using a telephoto lens to take a photo. And so then it's obviously done ethically, because these animals are not scared, they're not running, they're not, and that's fine. And I've been up in Serengeti. We went on a balloon ride, and that's also a very nice and quiet way of viewing animals from above. And we were able to get like kind of drone looking shots, which was really cool, but in a very what do you call it, like disturbing,
non-intrusive
non-intrusive, that was the word I was looking for, non-intrusive way, because the a balloon doesn't make any sounds really. So it is possible to get those photos and get that different angle, definitely. But it is about respecting the animals, like with any type of photography. And I think, unfortunately, with drones, we also spoke about this on the podcast, it feels like with drones, people are prone to push more boundaries because they are sending out a machine close to the animal. Like they're sending this out and they just sit looking on a screen. So when the animal is like reacting negatively or, snarling towards the drone, it's just snarling towards the machine. So you don't, as a person, you don't react like you should, with fear of like, if I'm in a car watching a lion a couple of meters away and the lion are not happy with us and it snarls at us, I will be scared because I'm sitting there physically holding my camera. So you will, you're more prone to with a drone, prone to like push boundaries, I think, because you are not really caring about the consequences, or not really, getting the reaction of the animal personally to you. It's going towards a machine, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And there is something to be said for that physical presence as well, and the potential physical threat, because when you get in that situation, if an animal, say a lion, does start snarling, I mean, you basically remove yourself fairly quickly.
Exactly.
And then that the lion has made its threat to you, you've cleared out, it's happy again, and you're happy. Possibly with a racing heart.
Exactly.
So do you have any moments taking photographs or just being with animals that really stand out as amazing moments for, I don't know, one reason or another? I'm just throwing this out there. I didn't mention this to you, but
there's many. I think every time I'm in the bush, and there's always something that stands out and that blows my mind, and just being, I don't know, being in nature is what I love, and you always get new photos and new things you see and new behavior. But there's definitely certain moments that stand out as like, this is probably a once in a lifetime kind of thing. The one was now recently in Kruger. We were there in January with a client, and we had amazing sightings in general, but this one sighting is just you knew this was once in a lifetime kind of thing. And it was funny because we were on our way back to camp, and we had some time, and we drove past these wildebeest on an open plain, and I was like, oh, well, like the camp is just 5 minutes away, like let's just sit here and watch the sunset, and it's just like the wildebeest are on the open plain, maybe we can get some cool photos with the sunlight like behind them and everything. And this is the beauty of, I think, photography, because it makes you stop at like those more common animals that you sometimes just drive past because, oh, we've seen plenty of these already. But I was like, it would be cool to take some photos here, so let's just watch them since we have some extra time anyway. So we're sitting there watching these wildebeest, and one of them, so it's January, which is around the time that it's called calving season. So around the time that they give birth, um, and one of these wildebeest looked very, very pregnant. And I said to my fiance, I was like, oh, this one looks very heavily pregnant. Like, do you think it will, give birth soon? And you never know, it could be tomorrow, 2 days, or whatever. And he's like, oh, that's very, like, you can see she's heavy, and she's heavily pregnant. And then she turns around, and there's this like bulge coming out of her. And we realize, I'm like, she's giving birth now. Like we see like this is happening. And we watched her like for maybe half an hour, 45 minutes or something. And she was, lying down, rolling a little bit, standing up, and you can see like she's going through labor like right now in front of our eyes. And I got footage of it, and it was literally like the sun setting behind her,
It
like
must have
that
been
golden.
amazing. Yeah.
It was absolutely mind blowing, and you just see like the legs starting to come out. And I think the most incredible thing for me was also like how quiet she was, like no sound whatsoever. And I was like, wow, she is going through labor and she's not making a single sound. And she would like stand up and like walk around and eat some grass, and then like push a little bit, and then like, oh, eat some grass, and the other wildebeest around there just walking around. And I'm like, this is the circle of life. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And eventually we had to leave her. Unfortunately, I would have wanted to stay to watch the whole thing, obviously, but it got dark and we had to get back to camp. And so we had to leave her. And the craziest thing was that this is, the circle of life. It's as we leave, we see like a couple of maybe 100 meters away, we see two hyenas coming walking, and we're like, oh no, like these hyenas are gonna smell the blood and everything, and they're gonna come after her. And we're like, no, this just feels heartbreaking, because we felt like the chances of this baby surviving was not very high. But then the next morning, we also again we heard about people who saw lions, and they were like, oh, there was a pride of 20 lions here. We're like, oh no, like this, there's no way this baby has survived. But then we on our way back out, we drive past the same spot and those open plains, and we obviously looking for, like, trying to see if we can see a tiny little baby that is still like wet and you can see has been born. You can never be sure it's the same one, obviously.
No.
But we found one that looked like it was fresh from, could have been that one. And yeah, so most likely it did survive. We can't be 100% sure, but like 90% sure that was the one and that it survived. And it just felt like a miracle that you had these hyenas coming past, you have such a huge pride of lions, and it still survived. And we got to watch it come into this earth, to this earth. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah, it is a difficult one, isn't it? Because obviously the babies are the sort of primary target for a lot of the predators if they can get, because they're very vulnerable. But it's great to know that they do survive. Obviously,
exactly.
Yeah, it must have been amazing to see that little one come into the world, though, and with that backdrop as well, or in that it just everything coming together.
Exactly. No, it wasn't just like, oh, we're seeing a wildebeest give birth. It was at sunset with this golden like hour light, and it was just I was like, this can't be real. But yeah, it was, and yeah, definitely something I'll never forget, and I'm pretty sure I won't have the chance to see again, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the thing, though, isn't it? Just getting out there and being ready for whatever happens.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So there was one thing you said about doing your guide training, and so when I did a little spell in Zimbabwe, and one of the things we did was track animals, and one of the things I got from the guy who was taking us there was how you read what's around you, and I know, and it's something that's absolutely fascinated me. But Are you good at tracking and recognizing what's going on around? Because it's like reading the language of what's been going on. There's a book there in front of you, and when you can read
Yeah.
how do you do a lot of that kind of tracking? And
Yeah, so we did learn during my guide training. We did do a tracking course. So in South Africa, just for those who don't know about like safari, and it kind of works differently in different parts of Africa. But in South Africa, you mostly will have a guide, and then especially in Kruger Park, have a guide and then a tracker who sits in front of the vehicle, and he's like fully trained specifically for tracking, and like that's his profession. And it is mind-blowing like what the trackers can spot and do, and like so that's why I just want to say, like, I don't want to call myself like a tracker, because I feel like that is I'm not what do you call it, I'm not like what's the word, I don't know. I
yeah,
don't
it's
want
like
to.
there's kind of this expert pro level.
Exactly.
Yeah, whereas you can kind of you can see some, like you can read some of it, but yeah, these guys,
Exactly.
they just, as you say, you don't even know where they're seeing this stuff.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. So yeah, so we did do a tracking course. So I do know the basics, and I can read the tracks and kind of figure out. And as you say, it is an amazing thing to be able to do, and it also just adds to the experience of being in the bush, because sometimes even if you don't see animals, you can see tracks, and you can like read of like, okay, here you can see the lions were lying here last night, and then they got up and they walked, and you can see, oh, here they've chased something, because you can see they're running faster, and like all of those kind of things. And it's like you, as you say, reading a book and you painting this picture, which is amazing. And my fiance is definitely better at this, way better at this than I am. I just did my training, and then I haven't actually worked as a specific guide. Now I work as a photographic guide, which is very different. But he worked as a guide for over a decade, so he also like has worked with a lot of trackers and learned from them, and worked in the bush, and they track animals, and like, okay, they find fresh leopard tracks, and they can see that, okay, these are probably from this morning or from an hour ago, or like this is really, really fresh. And then they will follow that until they find the leopard, which is just insane. Or the pride of lions, or whatever it is that they're trying to find. And it's absolutely mind-blowing and incredible that they're able to. And it, like, for me, I think because I can see the tracks, and I'll pick up on things, and I can, I basically know what different tracks look like, and like the difference between them, and I can kind of figure out, those kind of things. But I won't be able to say, oh, this was from last night or this was from this morning, unless it's like there's like an obvious sign of, I don't know, rain on top of it or something. But what they can do is like through grass, see like, oh, here the grass is bent, so it's walked, and you're like, how how is that possible?
How do you know it's bent?
Yeah, but like, oh, they walked here through the grass, and you're like, what? So it's absolutely incredible. And if for anyone who's listening, if you ever have a chance to go on safari at a reserve where they do track animals, and ask your guide and ask your tracker to show you and tell you about like the signs, because it is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I did a volunteering project in Zimbabwe, and one of the things they would do is that they would do a tracking on foot. And I'd go out with this guy, and we tracked elephant and rhino on foot, and that is just mind blowing.
Thrilling, eh?
Yeah. I mean, even with the elephants, as you get nearer to them, the dung gets warmer, but the dung beetles are different. It never occurred to me there are all these different species of dung beetle, and it's how close is the party?
Yeah,
These guys,
exactly.
these are really up for it. These may be over it.
Yeah, no, it's incredible.
So there's a link to your Instagram in the description to this. Will be
Awesome.
But if anyone is enjoying this and would like to see Karolina's work, it is amazing. And
Thank
also,
you.
you do safari trips, your guided trips. So do you want to talk about what you offer people if they would like to, get actually go out with you and photograph animals?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I do offer, I both offer workshops. So like that's more of like a group trip with a set date and a set schedule already. And they are amazing. And honestly, probably my absolute favorite part of my job. I've got a lot of favorite parts, but this probably tops it because I don't know, getting to bring people out into the places that I love, and also like bringing a group of people together who don't know each other from before, but who are very, like-minded, and like passion for photography, passion for nature, passion for traveling, and are just up for like an adventure and want to learn more. That is absolutely incredible. And for some of my workshops, people have become really good friends from
Mm.
being at the workshop, which is just fantastic. So I've just launched now our 2024 dates actually for the South Africa workshops. There is other workshops coming for 2024 as well in other countries, but the South Africa ones are the ones that are officially set and ready to be booked. And they are there's one for a incredible lodge, absolutely amazing. Like honestly, I think I can't talk enough about this lodge because it blew me away when we went there to visit. They invited us to come and stay and see what it's like, and I'm so happy that we did because it is something like I've never seen before. It's the top of the pyramid of
Yeah.
luxury
Mm.
experience, and the lodge itself is absolutely stunning, and then what they offer as well is incredible because you get full access to 2 photographic hides. Whenever you feel like it, you
Mm.
can go and stay at these hides. The one hide is right in front of the lodge, and both of them overlook water holes, so
Right.
animals are very
Yeah.
likely to come and drink, especially in winter when it's dry season, and there's not a lot of other water around. And the one that's right in front of the lodge, if you see something that comes walking from across the plains that the lodge is looking over, like sometimes it's cheetah, sometimes it's zebra, sometimes it's a lion, you can see them coming walking from quite far away, and then you can quickly get down into the hide because it's right in front of the lodge, and you can get in position for them to when they come and drink, which is just amazing. And then in general, the reserve it's beautiful, and they have amazing sightings. When we were there, we saw lion cubs that I'm not sure if how old they were, maybe 6 weeks old. So they were tiny little
Yeah.
things, and they were so comfortable with the vehicle because there isn't a lot of other lodges around. There's actually no other lodges that drive the same area. So they are very like, there's not really any other vehicles. So it's just
That's really
kind of
good.
you, and you can just spend
Mm.
your time there as long as you want. Um, and then included in the stay at this amazing lodge is also a helicopter flip. So if you want to get those like drone type of angles,
Yeah.
because you're not allowed to fly drones in any of the reserves in South Africa. So if you want to get that angle, this is where you can do it. So it's amazing because then you get to fly the helicopter up into the Blythe River Canyon, which is just outside Kruger there, and it's just absolutely stunning. So that's my one workshop which I'm very excited for, and that's the top luxury offering, which obviously for all the reasons that I've just said. There's
Yeah.
even more to it, but I'm not gonna keep on rambling on about it. And that one is in July next year. And then you can find the exact dates and everything on my website. And then there's another workshop in August, which is also to a beautiful place. But it's not as luxury. It's the more
Yeah.
mid-range version, but it's a stunning place as well, and also like full focus on photography. And I'm there. Craig, my fiance, will be there and guiding, and we will take care of you and bring the group together and do photographic lessons between all drives, and obviously be with you on all drives to assist with everything, from like getting the best angles at sightings to settings and all of those kind of things. So yeah, that's my 2 workshops next year. And then On top of that, we also, because we do run a safari company, we do help people book their safaris and, find the right place for them and for their budget and for their expectations and for the experience that they want. And then that there is the possibility of me coming with, if people want to book a private, like, photographic safari. I am available to join on that as well, if it's more a private one, where we catered specifically to, like, your specific needs. So yeah, that's what we do. So it's very possible to come join me in Africa if anyone's interested. They can just email me and let me know, and I'll tell them even more.
That's fantastic, and the email will be on the link as well, and it's on your Instagram, I think. So
Yeah,
it's and the links to the website as well is sort of via the Instagram. So yeah, definitely. I mean, that sounds amazing.
yeah.
uh, is there anything else you'd like to add or say before we wind things up?
No, I think I feel like I've been talking a lot, and
Oh, that was the
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, exactly. No, in general, I think I think my big thing that I try to tell people, that kind of what we were talking about in the beginning, is obviously, like, I recommend people to come to Africa and join me on safari. Like, it's amazing, and it is that's where my passion is, and that's what I want to share with people. But I also think it's so important for people to remember what is around them in their home, because there is wildlife and there is birds and there is beautiful things everywhere in the world, and I think it's just about appreciating them. Like we were talking about in the beginning, that once we've been to Africa and we've seen these exotic animals and we've seen the nature there, we start noticing all these things at home. And and even my mom, she, because of what I do and what I share and everything, she will constantly send me photos of, like, oh, here's the hare was in the garden, and oh, here's a woodpecker, and oh, the squirrel was here again. And she has found this, like, appreciation for wildlife, which I think is absolutely amazing, just around where we are. So I think just for people to remember that it's about appreciating all our wildlife
Yeah.
wherever we are in the world, and keeping an eye out for them, and you probably will see much more than you think. If you're not looking, you won't see anything.
Absolutely. That's the sort of tip I give people if they are planning to go on a wildlife trip: get their gear together, then photograph what's around them, and particularly birds, because they can be quite tricky to get good shots. So it's really good practice for when you're out in the bush. Even if you're on a workshop, it's nice to be really familiar with your camera and have that extra confidence of having nailed a few really good shots before you go away.
Absolutely. Yeah, because the thing is, I also say that to people who even the people who actually, like, live in the bush, like when we were working at the lodges and stuff, like, I was living in Kruger National Park, like I was living in the bush, but I wasn't out, I haven't done all my practice on leopards and lions. Like, I've been very lucky to see a lot of it and been able to practice that as well. But I practiced on squirrels in the garden at the lodge. Like, that's what I did, and there was an owl, so that was also obviously lucky, having the owl, like, hang around the lodge a lot. But that I used to photograph all the time, and that's where got a lot of practice on those smaller things, smaller birds around, and I think that you can do anywhere in the world. Sometimes people message me and they're like, oh, but I don't have any wildlife around and any birds. I'm like, but I live in a city, and I'm like, there's doves in a city, aren't there? There's always some kind of animal around, like, even if it's your dog or cat or someone else's pet or whatever it might be, an animal that is moving is good practice, because if you only practice on the big stuff, you will never become a good photographer, because you won't get enough practice. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, I got fascinated when I went out to close the gates to my house, and I noticed this beetle walking on gravel. So I was on the ground with a camera.
That's awesome.
With very narrow depth of field.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're right. The opportunities are everywhere. It's just a question
Yeah.
of really opening your eyes and seeing what's around you, and you'll see there's a lot more than you realized, I think.
And sometimes I feel like some of my photos, some of the best photos that I am the most proud of, are by are actually in taken of like normal birds or like very more common wildlife, because I've had the opportunity of like, one, I've stopped and I've been like, oh, let me actually, look at this wildebeest. If I wouldn't have stopped for the wildebeest and would have been like, oh, it's not a lion, I'm not gonna, then it's I would never have seen that incredible sighting.
Yeah.
But also like you're able to get into the right position and move around and all of those kind of things, and that makes a big difference.
You're absolutely right. Well, look, thank you so much for taking part in this. I really
Yeah, no,
appreciate it.
thank
I
you for
really
having
enjoyed
me.
our chat. I hope everybody else has. And
Yeah.
as I've said, there is a link to your Instagram and your email in the podcast description. And so if you want to make contact with Karolina, you can do that. And do go have a look at photographs, because they are stunning. And
No,
you're really
thank you
good at
very
the
much.
reels thing as well, which I hope you're really good at just getting on there and chatting about something. So I recommend those as well.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Yeah, it was great being here. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, thanks, Karolina. Bye. Bye.
Cheers.
Oh, and one thing just before you go, please take a look at the 2026 wildlife calendar. That's available now. It's on the website. There's a link below the description of this podcast episode. So please take a look, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye now.